Martin works across TV and filming production, shaping brand identities and creating short-form content for major channels like Disney and Channel 4, from adapting global campaigns for local audiences to producing promos and creative teasers. Enjoy the video.
Tell me a few things you do working in production teams such as production assistant and promo producer with brands like Channel 4 and Disney.
So both of those two channels directly involved shaping and creating the visual identity and the tone of voice for the respective channels. Obviously, everyone's heard of Disney, right? So that needs no introduction. But my involvement was, as I said, a few years ago now, when something called High School Musical was slowly taking over the world. And it was my job at the time was to work on the UK and European countries channel branding. So it was basically taking things that already existed. Obviously, Disney comes from the States, and basically making it a bit more relevant to those of us who are watching it. So it's called anglicizing for the UK, and then it would also involve not just translating, but it's called transcreating. So creatively translating stuff for other markets as well, so that you get like in jokes, you get puns, you get stuff like that. Whereas if you just normally translated it, you might miss out on some of those things. We also made interstitial content. So interstitials are quite short videos. They can be 15 seconds, 6 seconds, and things like that. And quite typically, when you're watching a show or a TV channel, you'll have some adverts that happen in between parts of a show, and then at the beginning and at the end of those adverts, you might just have something that's there just for a few seconds with like a 4 for Channel 4 or a Disney Channel logo or something like that. Or you might have a little clip from a show with the channel branding on. So I was involved in developing things like that, basically. Also, we were trying to come up with little teaser reels. So it's highlighting the most current shows that might be on those channels, and trying to get people to watch them, basically. And also flagging any big films they've got coming out or something like that. As I said, High School Musical, which was both a joy to work on and also a terror for 6 months of my life. And also at the time, I've already mentioned to you that we were looking into making stuff for foreign languages and things like that. While I was there, Disney launched in Russia, which was a very different foreign language that they'd ever done before. It's got a Cyrillic alphabet. The whole concept of something American going into Russia hadn't gone that well before. So it was a real idea of how can we basically keep the Disney identity and the fun and all of the characters that everyone knows, and basically make them work with people who were viewing it with perhaps a different mindset or something like that. The Channel 4 question, again, slightly different. So Channel 4 was set up in the early 1980s, and it was to help promote independent production companies rather than BBC or ITV and things like that. My role there, again, really heavily involved creating and developing channel branding, short form promos of shows that they were doing. Some of those were clip based, so you would basically maybe watch a film, or you'd watch some episodes of a series, and you cut some things together, hopefully in a fun way with some music and a voiceover and stuff like that. Or some of them were live action shoots as well, which were always fun to be involved in. Really hard work, but they're quite fun to be involved in. And again, that was at a time when the channel was expanding. They launched E4 as a channel, and they launched Film 4 as well. So we were kept very busy with those.
It's really cool. Yeah. What made you want to go into this career path?
So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, I'll be honest. When I left school with my A-levels, I worked in a bank for a year and a half, while I was trying to work out what I wanted to do at university and things like that. I ended up studying history and classical studies because I like stuff like that. But while I was doing that, I started doing some volunteering at a local hospital radio station just because I like music. It seemed like a worthwhile thing to do, and it seemed quite fun. And that really kind of whetted my appetite for getting involved in that, maybe as a job. So I started looking into how I could do that, researching the industry, how I could perhaps look to move into that with no experience whatsoever, not knowing anyone. I did a little bit of voluntary work at Teddington Studios out in Middlesex, just to again try to get some contacts and just to see if I really liked it or not, you know. And I thought, yeah, I did. So what could I do? Researched a few options, and I ended up enrolling in a postgrad in broadcast journalism. Now, I didn't go into broadcast journalism, but again, it showed recruiters' willingness on my behalf to actually try to do something to get into the industry. And that's super important because obviously a lot of people want to do that.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool journey. What's something you love about your profession as a producer and a production coordinator for these big brands?
I'd say it's exciting. It's busy and it's varied. So quite often you're doing similar things from week in, week out, from one month to another. But certainly in both broadcast production and advertising as well, you're working on several projects at the same time, and each project is at a different stage of development. So one day isn't really ever the same, and you might think everything's going well, and then suddenly it doesn't go well. So, you know, that as well as thinking, oh no, that's terrible. Yeah, it's not great, but at the same time, it keeps you energized because it's how can I fix this? What can I do to move this forward and things like that. And I'm someone who likes a challenge. I like um, to have various tasks on the go at the same time, and that kind of gives me the energy I need to get through long days or problems that I just don't know how to solve. And I've been doing this for quite a long time, and you always meet those sometimes, but unless you try, you don't know, right?
Yeah, sounds really fun. What do you find difficult about your roles at Channel 4, Film 4, and Disney Channel?
Um, I guess they were kind of the first jobs I had in the industries, as I mentioned, apart from doing a bit of volunteering here and there. But suddenly it was my job. I wanted to feel like I knew what to do, how to face things, how to deal with things, and I didn't. So I was quite junior, which is good, but there was a lot of learning on the job. It can be really fast-paced environment, which I love, but also if you're trying to work out how to do things, um, you're, the newbie on the block, etc., it can be a little bit scary. So that was, I guess, something that I didn't struggle with. I did struggle a little bit with, I'll be honest with you, and I had to really try and push myself out of my comfort zone and just think, do you know what? Don't be nervous about asking questions. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask at the end of the day. And if you don't know how to do something and you ask someone, then you do. And that was just a little bit of a shift in mindset for me. Um, but yeah, I think that was possibly one of the most toughest things when I first started.
Yeah, it sounds quite tough. What advice would you give someone wanting to go into the film industry?
I would probably say, and this isn't super fun, exciting stuff, but I would just say it's very basics like prepare and research and really be aware of what you're getting yourself into. It's not the bright lights and the glamour that many people think. Yeah, it's fun, it's exciting, you can work on some really cool stuff, but it's really hard work to start with often, and even throughout as you progress throughout different roles, the salaries are quite low compared with some other industries. And it's long hours as well, especially if you're doing shoots and things like that. Certainly, if you're just starting out and you're like a runner or a production assistant or something, you'll be one of the first people to get there really early in the morning. You'll be the last person to leave at night. Everyone will be wanting some of your time or to do stuff with you. So it's really hard work. Also, what is challenging even when you're not starting out, is that a lot of the roles are freelance or fixed term contracts. So they only last for a few months or something like that. There are full-time roles in the industry, but they're quite few and far between. So again, it's just to be prepared what you're getting into. It doesn't have perhaps the career stability or the job stability, the job security that you might find in other industries, basically. So, and I'm only really saying that because when you're getting into the industry, you maybe care less about things like that. But as you get older and as you have more responsibilities in life, those things become a little bit more important. And I know it might sound quite boring, but it's just true. And, it took me quite a long time to realize that, probably too long. But I'd say just research it, be prepared for what it may be, and if it's something you want to do and it's something you're passionate about, give it a go, for sure.
Yeah, it's really great advice. During your career, what's the most rewarding thing you've ever done?
So the most rewarding thing, I'd probably say it's when you're able to support good causes, which might sound a bit twee, but I genuinely mean that. Media can be quite cutthroat, it can be quite fast paced, but there's always opportunity where you can help people out or do something. One of the first things I think we did, and it sounds really, really little, but it was actually really quite a cool thing to be involved in. At Channel 4, we had quite a few famous people coming in for shows on the weekend or coming to use the studio or something like that. And quite simply, we just got a large autograph book. And we asked the guys when they came in if they'd mind just putting a little message in it. And we had some really famous people in there, film stars, pop stars, musicians, actors, actresses, all of those people. And mostly when we told them what it was for, they were happy to do so. And at the end of every year, we would auction our big book. And basically each year, someone from the team we'd all basically put different charities just in a hat, pull them out, and whichever charity came out, the proceeds of the book went to that. So we're not talking about loads and loads of money, but I think we generally got £3,000 or £4,000 for this book, which is pretty cool to go to a charity. And they were generally like smaller charities and things. So that amount of money, I'm going back 20 years now, it scares me. But that kind of money is really good for stuff like that. So that was really cool. And I guess at Disney, I really enjoyed being involved. They had a little incentive where Disney toys and things like Disney products were shared with children's hospitals and things like that. Specifically at
Oh,
key points of the year, like Christmas and stuff like that. And no one likes to be in hospital any of the time, especially if you're a child, especially at Christmas. So just little things like that. A lot of those kind of things that you could volunteer to be involved in. You didn't have to be, but stuff like that is really cool because it's kind of giving back to people and it's just a nice thing to do, right?
yeah, it's very kind. What does a typical week look like when managing multiple short form content projects?
So it's generally quite busy. It really does depend on what stage of the process you're at that time. Um, so you could basically be booking some edits, you could be planning a shoot, you could be looking into some legal feedback because obviously you have to be mindful of legal regulations, rules, etc., to know if what you're planning or what you've made can actually be broadcast. Because if it can't, you're wasting your time and you have to go back and rescript or something like that. So that's a kind of a constant that you need to be aware of all the way through. Does that sometimes have an impact on what you can do creatively? Absolutely. But it's evaluating, re-evaluating, and it's another one of the challenges that I mentioned before, lots of things going on. It's also one of those things where you're usually working on more than one project at the same time. So in the same day, you might be working on 3 or 4 projects. You might be booking a voiceover artist and attending the session, which means sending lots of components to the audio studio, so like a music track, some sound effects, stuff like that, and also physically going there with a script and sitting in the studio with the voiceover artist and telling them how you want them to deliver the lines. And it could be a 30-second advert, interstitial, anything like that. It would easily take you probably an hour to record that, just because you want to make sure that you're getting as many options as you can so that when they've gone home, you can choose the best ones that fit together and basically then edit them together a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, effectively. You could be doing things like that. You could be booking editors, video editors to do some things. You could be doing paperwork. You could be making sure that you're paying everyone for the work they've done for you. You're budgeting for work you need to do and things like that. So it's very difficult to say there's kind of a typical week. It really just depends on what stage your various projects are on at that time.
Yeah, sounds like a very cool, very busy week.
Spinning plates for sure.
What's the most important skill for succeeding in film production?
Um, I mean, there's lots of things that spring to mind. So things like creativity, imagination. But I think possibly one of the most important things is just the ability to multitask. I've said a couple of times now about how quite often you're doing, one day won't just look like doing this all the way through the day. It will be lots of different things happening. Attention to detail is a really key thing. And the ability to work part of a team as part of a team as well, because you'll certainly have your own responsibilities and the things that you need to do, but you're only one person and you have to get along with people, sometimes in quite fraught or busy times when perhaps people aren't in the best of moods. So all of those things combined, really, there's not one single thing, but I expect you'd hear that about most industries as well.
It's really good advice. What has all of these incredible roles taught you?
I think to be pragmatic, basically. I've mentioned some of the specific skills that are useful and required to have just to do your job. But I think one of them is just like personal resilience, basically. It's a demanding industry. It can be hard. You can be working long hours. You might not be getting paid very much for it. Um, but it's taking ownership for the things you can control and also just being mindful of the things you can't. And that's something that I didn't learn until I've been doing it for a few years, to be quite honest. Um, it's it's much easier to say than to master, and it's still something that I'm learning today, which is why I'm still interested in doing this kind of. I think personal resilience is a good one because sometimes, if you get stuck on something, it's like, no, I should know how to do this, but don't beat yourself up about it. Work out how to do it. Ask someone. Succeed. So I
Yeah,
think that will be my answer.
it's a very good answer. We're going to my favorite bit now, which is the creative section.
Oh.
So, uh, short videos typically takes under 60 seconds and require a rapid production cycle. How many shoots normally take place daily?
So it really depends on how many individuals, actors, and people or places are involved, and what you need to be doing with them. 60 seconds doesn't sound that long, but actually, to fill 60 seconds, you need to shoot a lot more than that because you might have stuff that you can't use. Actors might say the wrong words, they might trip over, stuff like that. So, and also it depends what they might need to be doing. You might have part of the story set inside in a house, part of the story might be outside on a beach. So you've got to take into account that if you need the same people there who are going to be on screen, you physically need to get them there. So it might take a day in a studio or a pretend house or even a real house to shoot that on location. If they needed to be outside, you'd need to go outside as well and do that. And you'd have to move all of the cameramen, the sound guys, the producers, the makeup artists, everything like that, from one place to another. So it could take 2, 3 days, just depending on what's going on, and also things that you can't really control, like the weather. That's awkward. Um, so I guess my answer is I'm not really sure. You have to basically plan things like that a lot in advance. You have to think about budgets and things like that because some of the ideas that you want to do, you just can't do because you don't have the time and you don't have the budget to do so. So it's also thinking about what could you do instead. That's why quite a lot of content you see is clip based. So you don't have all of those extra expenses, the time or um, the organization of perhaps a shoot to manage.
It's a really, really great answer. Thank you so much. What skills make you effective in a fast-paced production environment?
Um, I think the ability to pre-plan and prepare for what's needed, thinking about ways that you might need to be flexible and have contingency plans in place. I mentioned just a second ago, like if a shoot and it's outside, what's the weather forecast going to be? If you know that you've got an inside and an outside shoot to do, um, trying to choose the most favourable day and hope that it doesn't rain, basically, unless you want rain, of course. Um, Also think about practicalities, access, parking, when people are available, time of the day. Will that time of the day um, suit your storytelling, or will you need to basically also plan for certain kind of lighting and things like that? Um, what can you do to stay on time without incurring overrun costs? That's a big one for shoots, because people, you've got sometimes a lot of crew members there. If they're having to work an hour or a couple of hours extra, they're going to want paid for that, being paid for that, sorry. So you have to be mindful of your budget. I think the cornerstone is to be able to be reactive to real world needs, unforeseen challenges, and reactive to clients who are there. Um, so I think being able to think quickly on your feet, but always trying to be solution focused is a good thing. And that's something that comes with experience, but it's also something that some people just get basically. And you never know sometimes what you're going to face. When I was working at Disney, for example, we were doing a Halloween shoot and it was in a studio and it was quite cool. And we had some snakes, some real snakes, because they were meant to be like crawling
Wow.
over skulls and stuff like that. And we had a break for 15 minutes to move things around, and the snake handler lost one of them. So
Oh my gosh.
we spent 2 hours trying to find this snake. It wasn't a poisonous snake; it was just a big snake, and it was curled up around a light because it got cold. But we to say we panicked a little bit at the time is a slight understatement. But there we go.
Wow, that's crazy. Um, can you describe your approach to creating a brand identity of a channel or individual show?
I can try, sure. I mean, it's very much kind of an integrated approach, so it's not really down to any one individual. If you're talking about a brand, it's in most cases the brand will already exist, or it might be kind of part of another brand. So it would have its recognized tone of voice. It would have perhaps a visual identity already. So if you're making kind of a sub brand from it, you would look to connect the two together, because if this one brand is cool, everyone loves it, you're going to want to basically let people know that this new brand is part of that, or it's if you like that, you're going to like this as well. So it's basically like playing on little tricks as well. Um, there's many teams involved from marketing, brand guardianship perspective, because you can't just go and do whatever you want. You have to be also mindful of what you can do legally, if you're allowed. Has anyone else had any branding ideas that look similar or the same that might get you into trouble for copying something or plagiarism? So there's lots of teams that work behind the background. So as well as having taking those things into account and coming up with creative ideas and things that you could do to move it forward or introduce something, there's lots of teams in the background that will be checking things out legally or looking into whether or not that's something, a kind of direction that that brand or that channel wants to move into. Um, so there's lots and lots of meetings. There's lots of ideas that are put forward, lots of ideas that are rejected, and you hope that you have more ideas put forward than you have rejected, and you can move forward with one of those.
Yeah, that's very good to know. I wasn't expecting that. This one's quite a fun one. If you were to swap your job for one day, who would it be with?
Oh, it would basically be, I'd actually love to be an actor or a presenter.
Mhm.
So I'm going to opt for a younger Harrison Ford. I'd love to see things from the other side of the camera, and I'd love to basically be involved in something really fun and like a role that people know, basically. I also am a bit of a geek, so I like that.
Yeah. Um, What's one skill you never thought you needed, but now you rely on?
This sounds really, really exciting. Excel. It's absolutely invaluable. I'm not the most competent in its use, but it's basically just such a good thing for trackers, keeping things updated, looking at budgets, looking at time plans, things like that. It's really good. And if you can get good into very familiar with the formulas and things like that, it can save you so much time. And I need to get better at that, it must be said. I've got no embarrassment about saying that. I think it's very good. Also, I guess there's something that is important, especially in more recent years, is knowing what AI can do. AI isn't going anywhere, and it's already changing many areas of this and other industries as well. And a bit like when the internet first came along and emails and things like that, it's not going to go away, and it's important not to be left behind by it. It's great at doing lots of things. It's not great currently at doing some things, but just knowing what exists and knowing what's out there, and just having an awareness of it is really important, I think.
Yeah, that is very important. Tell me one experience in your career that felt like magic.
Um, actually, I've actually got two. So
That's good.
one of
Me too,
them,
Chris.
one of them was meeting and directing my sporting hero, an ex-footballer called Thierry Henry, for an
Wow.
advertising campaign. He was voicing an advert for Pepsi, and I got to direct him, and I was very starstruck, but managed just about to keep it together professionally. The other one was when I worked at Channel 4, and I was running it. I'd only been there about 6 months, and the American actor Jack Black came in for a show, and he was a really, really funny guy. And myself and my colleague, we'd both only been there about 5, 6 months, and we had to get their pizzas for them. And they were sitting around eating the pizzas, and then we just kind of like skulked away into the shadows. And he was a really nice guy and just said, "Hey, you two, come and eat pizza with us." So we did. It was awesome.
Wow, you
And
think
then we
so,
got his
Jack Black.
autograph, and he was just a very, very fun guy. So yeah, both those things really stick out in my mind.
Yeah, sounds amazing. Name one company you'd love to work with.
I would I'd love to do kind of like a big film type thing if I could. I would I managed to actually get a little bit involved in one of the Harry Potter things, just from a perspective of like the Creature Workshop, when they were
Mhm.
making some of the animals and some of the kind of creatures, which was awesome. But as I said before, I'm a bit of a geek. I would love to work with Lucasfilm. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I love Indiana Jones. It would just be a dream come true. I would be so happy. It'd be great.
Yeah. Um, if your career were a film or show, what title would it be?
Sadly, for me, it will probably be Expecting Someone Taller. I'm not particularly blessed in the height department, as I'm sure your dad will tell you.
Yeah. Um, what advice would you give to an aspiring producer in short form content or channel branding?
Um, I would say similar to what I've mentioned before, just prepare, research, and be aware of what you're getting yourself into. Just to make sure that that's something that you're passionate enough about to potentially work long hours for not much money, and also, it being a difficult industry to get into. You're only as good when you're freelancing as your last project and the people you're working with. So being able to get on with people and work with them, even if you're very tired, is an important thing, because some of those contacts you'll meet again and again and again. Some of the people I've worked with in the last 10 days, I've known for 15, 16 years, and we might not have physically seen each other for 5 or 6 years, but the same faces come back around again. So it is kind of its own little community as well. So I think that will basically be my answer. I mean, try and have confidence in yourself, do your homework. None of this, doing your homework doesn't sound particularly rock and roll or fun, but it's really important to know what you're getting yourself into to make sure it's the right choice for you. It's what you want to do. And if you're passionate about it, follow those dreams, because you won't know unless you try.